Statements I need to make.
We're on.
Good. The regular meeting of the Dinkytown Special Service District Advisory Board will now begin. Good afternoon. My name is Michael McLaughlin, and I will be facilitating this meeting of the Dinkytown Special Service District Advisory Board. Before we begin, I'd like to note that this meeting includes the remote participation of members as authorized under Minnesota Statute Section 13D.021 due to the declared local health pandemic. I will now call this meeting to order and call the roll so that we may verify the presence of a quorum. Board members, when I say your name, please indicate if you are present. Jeff Ashley.
Present.
Brian Deppie.
Present.
Lynn Nyman.
Present.
Good. I will also note I'm joined by Andrew Carlson and David Bauer, both with the City of Minneapolis Department of Public Works. There being a quorum of board members present, we can proceed with the meeting. The first item, and again, the packet was distributed in advance of the meeting, is the adoption of the agenda. A draft agenda was included. And if desired, we can also, in one motion, accept the minutes of the last meeting, which was July 13th, 2021. If someone would like to make a motion to approve both the proposed agenda and the draft minutes.
I'll move.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll
I'll
second.
second.
Then I think I heard you first. Any further discussion on the motion to approve the agenda and the draft minutes to the July meeting from last year? Hearing none, I will call the roll. Board member, when I say your name, please indicate how you'd like to be recorded as voted. Jeff Ashland.
I'm sorry, I had someone talking to me. Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, this is we're taking a vote on the motion to approve the agenda and the minutes to the prior meeting. So I'm just calling your name for you to say how you'd like to be recorded as voted.
Approved.
Very good. Brian.
Aye.
Lynn.
Aye.
Good. That motion of the agenda and the minutes to the prior meeting have been approved as distributed. Next on the agenda is the public comment period. I will note that as of right now, we have not been joined by any members of the public, but we can table that till the end of the meeting should someone join us. Otherwise, we'll keep going and keep moving here. The next item is a very brief discussion item on the 2021 annual report. I am going to share my screen. So included in the packet was the 2021 annual report. This has been previously distributed to the advisory board. It also recently went to city council and was approved by accepted and received and filed by the city council. Again, this is the bookend document. At the beginning, before the year starts, there's an operating plan that says what the advisory board plans to do. And then at the end of the year, we do a brief annual report to encapsulate what the group did. So there's an overview at the beginning. There's members. Mark Edwards, I will note, is no longer on the board and the role of the board. And then, whoops, I'm going to zoom in here. Let me. There we go. We do a real quick summary of services to again, just try to capture everything the group did and the advisory board, what the advisory board accomplished. So we did have almost 41 inches of snow last calendar year. We of course did the tree lighting. We lit 78 trees the prior season. So up until late September, there were 78 trees lit. Through because of construction for this season that just concluded, we had 59 trees within the district that we were able to light, and we'll talk a little bit more about tree lighting as part of your 2022 work plan. Litter management, there were almost 11,000 bags of trash removed from the district's 60 district maintained trash receptacles over the course of the year. Pan and broom, so sidewalk litter removal was performed 36 times over the course of the year, so about an average of 3 times a month, but it was actually more in the summer and less frequently in the winter based on prior conversations with the advisory board, which removed an additional 161 bags of trash as part of those services. And then there were spring and fall cleanups that were also performed in April and November of last year. Too far. Street pole banners, again, you have a placeholder in your budget, but that was not something the board had recommended last year. And then quickly on streetscape maintenance and repair, Graffiti abatement was performed as needed just January through December. Again, this is graffiti abatement of elements in the public right of way, not on private property. So we removed over 1,300 instances of graffiti over the course of the year. We watered some young trees throughout the growing season, and there were also some minor streetscape fixtures, including removal of some abandoned bicycles, which we do every year, and replace some trash receptacle lids and lanyards, some things like that. So again, real high level, wanted to just capture what the group accomplished. Financially, I'm on the next page here. Again, you have this in your packet. The budget, the amended budget was $217,282. The actual spend was $155,604. So there was a carry forward surplus of a little over $62,000 that has been incorporated and carried forward into your 2022 budget that you'll see amended or adjusted in just a moment. And the final page of this is just the service area plan of where the particularly the snow and the pan and broom services are performed, not necessarily where the lighting is performed. Any questions on the 20? This is not an action item, but happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, we'll move on to 2022.
What amount?
Okay.
So half of that?
Yes.
Moving on to 2022. So again, the first column is the budget that the group had recommended and went to council. This is the budget you recommended last summer for this year. The adjustments reflect that those carry forward dollar amounts that I was just talking about. So your surplus funds from 2022. Consistent with what we've done in the past, we've allocated those, at least for placeholder purposes, to your sidewalk snow line item and your tree line item. But know that we do have flexibility to spend those dollars under any of these budget line items if desired. So your amended budget is $262,678. And again, I will note the service charge amount did not change. The surplus funds are prior surplus funds. So the service charge revenue that will be collected this calendar year is still the dollar amount recommended by the advisory board last summer, which is $201,000. There are a couple of things we wanted to highlight just in terms of the work plan for this year. Actually, we started 2 weeks before because there was a little bit of break in the weather. So like last summer, we did increase the frequency of the pan and broom to 1 time per week. So again, that was a recommendation that the advisory board had made for last summer. So we implemented that 2 weeks ago, and that will continue through November 30th. So again, that's weekly pan and broom of the district. And then over the winter, we'll switch back to every other week. So there's a little bit lower frequency when the pet volumes are a little lower in the district. Graffiti abatement, we're currently also doing that once a week in the summer, which is what the frequency that we had in place for last summer. So that'll be in place for this summer, and that has already started at that higher frequency. We were doing it twice a month prior to that. Moving on, streetscape maintenance contract. We wanted you to know that that was rebid last summer and went into effect January 1st. The contractor ended up being the same, and the pricing pretty much stayed flat. And this might surprise you, but we actually saw some unit prices go down slightly. So there, with everything going on with inflation in the economy, in terms of rebidding it, we expect the service cost to be very similar to last calendar year. I will note that if we do extend that contract going into next year, there is a consumer price index, not automatic, but there is an ability to increase those prices to reflect CPI increases. Moving on, snow, and I'm doing this quick just because I know everyone's got time, but please stop me if you have questions. Snow contract, that was also rebid. Pricing for that also stayed pretty similar to prior years. So and you did end up with the same contractor. Again, that was following a competitive bid process. the contractor that had your work ended up being the lowest responsive and responsible bidder. So they continued that work for this last winter season, which I will note is continuing as we speak, very lightly. Any feedback on the snow contract? We do build that in so that the city has the option to extend that for an additional second or third winter season. Any feedback the group would like to give the city in terms of whether that contract should be extended or not for next season? Any
Are we
issues?
talking about just how we evaluate the particular team that's doing it, or
Yes.
if we want to go? Well, you know, I had an issue with them. I think they're going crazy on the salt, and they even salted like a week ago, and just mountains of salt. And I was catering at the Varsity Theater, and there was just this huge trail of salt going down the middle of the sidewalk last Saturday of the 9th. And I think they're very careless with the salt. And I think in the interest of saving money on salt, I think they should be less careless. You mentioned to me the liability issues about slipping and falling, and I respect that and I get it. But I think that the people doing it need to be called out on this salt application, because they're throwing a lot of product away, and not because I'm sweeping it up. They're just laying it on so heavy that it's mindless, and I don't think it should continue.
I will note that we do require the, and then I know you and I spoke offline. The contractor is required to have the MnDOT de-icing application certification, and they do that. Part of what we experience, and I'm just describing, and we did go out and look at things after you had reached out to us, Lynn, as we would with anybody would contact us with any concerns like this. There's a couple of things that are happening. One, they accept the liability when they take on the contract for slip and falls. So while the district doesn't pay extra for like on a per time de-icing application, so know that, the vendor is applying the chemical that they feel they need, and we have talked to them, to be clear, the chemical they feel is appropriate for commensurate with their liability that they're taking on. Part of what happens is sometimes they proactively apply chemical to help keep it from bonding before we get a snowfall. The other thing that can happen, things that can happen are snow sometimes comes off of awnings and or buildings and parapets and other things that falls on the sidewalk. If that started melting and got, and kind of stayed there, the salt is also intended to help address those issues that happen after the vendor leaves before they come back for the next snowfall. Because their liability, they stay in the liability loop. So that's partly why they apply as much chemical as they do. But please know that we do talk to all our vendors about the amount of chemical that's applied. And again, we do require in the contract that they follow the that they have MnDOT de-icing certification, which part of that is very much aimed at applying enough chemical that you need to, but not more than you need to. Other feedback on the snow contract? Overall, I think we thought the service level, definitely met expectations. So our inclination is probably to extend that contract for next season, unless there are board members that the board feels otherwise. Moving on, electrical system repairs. Wanted to talk about, as I mentioned, we've had a unique year with a seasonal lighting perspective, in part because of construction projects and due to some repair issues. So there are a couple of projects that we weren't able to complete in the middle of winter because of just the ground being frozen, and it's not real conducive to trying to make sure conduit is clear and things like that, that we are going to take on this spring with the electrical contractor. One of them is on the north side of the Marshall. We've got an electrical issue there. We're able to get it powered, but it isn't quite working how we want. There's also another location on 4th Street, happens to be in front of Lynn's Restaurant, where there were some trees that we couldn't get power to because of some broken, or what we perceive as some failed conduit underneath the sidewalk. So there are a couple of places where we're going to have to open up a couple of sidewalk panels to make that conduit repair and reestablish those electrical connections. So know that those are on the docket for this spring. Separate from that, we are pleased, and I was going to mention this in a minute, but we are working with the CA Ventures project we'll be reinstalling the electrical system as part of that redevelopment. The developer will pay for that cost, so that's not an SSD cost, but know that it will be reinstalled so that there's power on the trees, just like there was prior to construction. And that is something we're working with that contractor and with that developer. Similarly with the other project on 4th Street that's underway. We're still trying to get line of sight on how much in the right of way they're going to be doing. Obviously it's blocked right now, but we'll try. That'll be another item that we may be doing some work on that project's behalf. And there are a couple other locations where there's just some electrical issues that we're going to need to tend to that couldn't be done in the middle of winter. Any questions on the electrical system repairs?
Anything being done with getting power over to Brian's side of the street?
Yeah, so great question. So we worked with Riverton and Brian and his team, and we were able to get lights on one of the trees on the north end of the block up near 5th Street on the west side of the street there. The other trees, we either were too small or we weren't able to get power to them.
Okay.
So I think the goal would be over time, if we can work with, continue to work with Riverton, if we can get power there safely, meaning from a long-term perspective while the lighting's on the trees, we will, and we'll certainly try to do that. So kind of segueing a little bit, we wanted to ask the question, and I'll preface this by saying we don't have to do this, but we wanted to ask the group the question. We did a pilot prior to construction in front of the liquor store on 5th that's now no longer there. We did a pilot with LED stringers on the trees. So we wanted, it's still early enough in the year that if the group wanted to recommend converting over to LED light stringers for this upcoming lighting season, we believe we still would have an opportunity to purchase that lighting material in time to get those up this fall. So wanted to ask the group, again, we did a pilot. We talked about this in the past. We did a pilot on a couple of trees. The pilot was successful. We had very few issues. The light, the stringers were on when we wanted them on. And overall, the aesthetic was consistent, if not better than the incandescents. There is a cost implication.
If it lasted more than 1 year, though, I think
that was
selling us was that it was going to last more than 1 year and it would make up for the cost, the increased cost in the stringers.
Yeah, so it was about 1.5 years, and then construction happened and it came down. So, so I think that is. How
about in other neighborhoods? What are you seeing as far as lifetime of these?
Yeah, so this is honestly partly why we're mentioning this, not honestly, because we're always honest with you guys, but we have had 2 districts now who do a lot of tree lighting. These 2 districts converted over to LED, one 4 seasons ago and one season ago, and both have had very good success with switching over to LEDs. The lights, because they're solid state, are much less prone to water intrusion, and therefore there are many fewer GFI faults, which means the lights are on the trees more of the time when you want them lit, because we just really don't have water intrusion issues. From a longevity perspective, the district that converted first, we just got their fourth season out of the first batch of stringers. We have had to supplement, maybe 5% a year for the last couple of years. And even heading into their fifth season this year, we will not have to do 100% replacement. We will need to buy some replacement. So it's still sort of an ongoing pilot, but right now there's very clear signs that we can get at least 4 seasons. And these are 4 6-month seasons, to be clear, because the other districts don't put them up in the fall and take them down in late winter. That we've had good success with the LEDs. Aesthetically, it's equal to, if not better. So just the visual representation, the lights actually are a little bit brighter. So there's a little bit better aesthetic benefit. And I would say, again, one of the things we do during the lighting season, at least the core lighting winter season, is we have the contractor go through once a week and reset GFIs. In both of those districts, and I don't want to overstate this, but I'm not sure if I can, the incidences of GFI faults is dramatically different. I mean, like, their lights are just on when they want them on for the most part.
And what is the cost difference if we go with LED versus incandescent?
Yep, it's effectively, based on recent bidding, 2.5 times. So the same stringer for LED is 2.5 times the cost of an incandescent. So in the case of those districts that have switched over, the break-even point, all costs in, lower electrical costs, but lower maintenance costs, some increased storage costs, things like that. The break-even point appears to be the 3rd season. And at this point, we can say that the stringers make it, for the most part, at least 3 seasons. So financially, over time, it is the same, if not to some degree a lower cost to the district. But it's not more over time, is what I think we're comfortable saying.
Would our $55,000 carryover from last year be enough to pay for all the lights?
Yes.
Okay.
More than enough. In fact, we did a rough estimate because we figured the question, well, what kind of money are we talking? If we lit, so the season that we just concluded, we lit about 59 trees. So there are more trees in the district than that, to be clear. But at the end of the season, that's what we removed, because a lot of that was due to construction, as I was mentioning a little while ago. Rough costs to buy LEDs, we're probably looking in the $10,000 range for those stringers, was the rough calculation based on the number of stringers we use on the trees that we have lit.
I guess I would be in favor of proceeding with it myself, but I have been since we first talked about it.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's worth a shot.
Oh, I think we just lost Lynn.
Well,
Hopefully she can rejoin us.
yeah, I'd like to get her feedback on this. Let's come back to this then, and hopefully she can rejoin us. But I mean, you'd have a majority to go forward, but let's maybe just come back to that topic when she returns.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I remember the people were sensitive last year was businesses were hurting, and Lynn can probably speak to that. She can speak to that better than I can. She talks to more of those people that own, one store. If we're going to have to increase the dues, it probably would change my mind. But if we can use our surplus to do it, and not have to raise people's rate for this year and buy the lights, I'd like to.
There's no question that's a true statement at this point, meaning we can absolutely utilize some of that surplus. In fact, the surplus almost by itself, without dipping into the original 22,000 we had in the budget, might almost buy the lights.
Okay.
Might buy almost all of the lights. So All right, well, we will proceed with that. I should note, because of the failure issues we were having with the incandescents, we have removed all of the lights at this point. We did a couple of weeks ago. We were just having too high a failure rate with the incandescent stringers. So you do not have lights on the trees at this point. So typically we put them up in September, kind of as school returns. Based on this feedback, we'll go ahead and get the order in, and then we'll kind of plan on reinstalling the lights in August. Sort of late August, so that they're in place for the upcoming school year. So any further questions on that? I am David, do you want to text in to see if she's coming back, able to come back?
I'll try to get her back in the main name.
Okay, great. Let's see. I mentioned the development projects. Anything else on the 2022 work plan? Otherwise, we can move on to discuss the draft 2023 work plan.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, I've described all the other services. Everything else is, described in terms of streetscape maintenance and the graffiti abatement frequency and so forth. So please know that though, if we're not going into detail now, please know it's already in motion, and the contractor's already been given the instructions. And I think we've said this in the past, but just to say it again, we do meet with the district's streetscape maintenance contractor every week, and oftentimes we're talking to them much more frequently than that. Just so you know that we're in very close contact with the vendors, and similar to that is true in the winter. We meet with the snow contractor once a week as well, at least once a week, and certainly before any major snow. So moving on, 2023 budget, draft budget was included in the packet. As we do each year, I went through and compared to where we ended the year most recently completed, which is 2021, to see if there are any adjustments, looking at where expenses actually landed, to see if there's anything that needs to be adjusted, either up or down. Based on that analysis, recognizing that, if we don't need to go in with an increased service charge, certainly we don't automatically do that. So based on all of that, the draft recommended budget is flat in terms of the service charge revenue. So there'd be no increase in service charges in this budget as drafted, and the work plan as described and is understood by the board can still be funded through these resources. And I'm happy to go through, it is all the line items proposed are the same. But please know that that wasn't just change the year in terms of the budget. It was also based on some analysis.
Okay.
Thoughts on the 2023 budget?
Looks fine.
So one question we had, at least again, wanted to ask, the question of the condition of the pedestrian lights has come up in conversation since the board last met last summer. And this, the maintenance of the light poles very much falls into the category of it is something the district could allocate dollars towards if the advisory board wanted to recommend it, meaning it's an eligible use of your service district costs. However, the service district is not the responsible party. So the responsible party for the light poles and the maintenance of the light poles, and primarily referring to the aesthetic. So the paint is, given the age, the paint is chipping on a lot of the bases. The primary responsible party is the traffic division within Public Works. And as is needed, they are and have replaced the low-level poles with the new city's new 15-foot pedestrian light standard pole. So thank you, Lynn. Appreciate you coming back.
I don't know what happened. It's my computer, so I apologize.
Oh, no worries. We didn't, there was no action item taken in your absence. We were just reviewing the 2023 budget.
Lighting piece.
Oh, tree
Yeah,
lighting,
lighting.
the recommendation was, well, at least the consensus seemed to be to proceed with converting over to LEDs for the upcoming lighting season. Any comments on
And you had
that,
said
Lynn?
that was two times as much, the cost increase would be 2.5? Is that what you
Yes.
said?
For the materials, yes. But
Right.
again, what we have found is over the lifespan, of the stringers, by and
Right.
large, it's financially neutral.
Yeah, I got most of that because you were talking about the
Okay.
3-year period.
Yep, okay.
So it'll increase our budget by how much?
This was, I think you might have missed this, because you have a surplus, that includes tree lighting, dollars for tree lighting. We don't need to increase the budget to switch over to LEDs because you have a surplus in your tree lighting line item.
Okay. And you also said in the discussion I heard that they come out and reset the GFI.
We do that now. We have for years.
Right. What were you saying about LED and the GFI?
Oh, that they don't trip as often, so they stay on. They're on more of the time.
Got it. Okay.
Less resets.
I remember that too. I guess I thought there's something else labor-wise with the LED that was a positive, but I don't recall what it was. Anyway, that's fine. I support it.
Okay, the other comment I had made was, because of the failure rate of the incandescents, we did remove all the tree lighting a couple of weeks ago. So normally that is something the district has left up year round, but the failure rate we were seeing was so high, we just removed them. So we'll order the lights, and the plan will be to put them in, assuming we have them in, which we think we can at this point. We'll start putting them up in August, so they're there for the start of the new school year. So let's see, I'm back on 2023. If everybody's comfortable jumping back to that. We were just discussing, Lynn, just so you have a sense, I was describing that overall, this is a flat budget. We feel we can accomplish the work of the district, at least as the current work of the district in the existing budget, and that there, at least in draft format, there would not be a reason to propose increasing the service charges, although we haven't taken an action item on the budget. And part of that included an analysis, completing an analysis of last year's charges to make sure that, to see where things actually landed in terms of expenses. One item in the context of the 2023 budget that I was just discussing, and again, falls in the category I was saying is not a district responsibility, but it's something that is an eligible use. If the group wanted to allocate dollars to refurbish your pedestrian light pole bases, which has been an item that has been raised since the group last met last July by some in the community. So we wanted to ask the question and, at least have a conversation if it's something you wanted to spend some dollars on, either refurbishing them or beginning a process of replacement. But again, I'll stress, the district does not have to spend dollars on this. It can. The traffic division within Public Works is the primary responsible party. And I will note, like, there's a pole that has been replaced, I think, in the last 12 months, right at the corner, Lynn, in front of your restaurant, for example, on 4th Street. That's an example where, as needed, the traffic division is replacing poles. I would also hasten to say that in these new construction areas, like what happened, when the Marshall was completed and when the Venue was completed, the new CA Ventures site, those will all have the new 15-foot standard poles installed as part of those projects, as part of a development. thoughts, feelings one way or another, if it's something you want to allocate money towards?
I'm really not in favor of spending money on it.
That's helpful.
I'm not either. I think if the city will eventually fix them, I would say let that be the solution.
Yeah.
Brian?
Agreed.
Good. Again, wanted to ask the question since it is something that had been, I mean, certainly we were aware of it before, and we've actually talked about this before, but wanted to just ask the question again. Any other discussion on the 2023 draft budget?
Nope.
Nope.
Someone like, is there a motion to adopt the 2023 budget and work plan as drafted?
I'll make a motion.
Yeah, motion, is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion to adopt the 2023 draft budget as distributed? That I will take a roll call vote. When I call your name, please indicate how you'd like to be recorded as voting on the motion to approve the 2023 budget. Jeff?
Aye.
Brian?
Aye.
Lynn?
Aye.
Good. That motion is adopted, and that will be the 2023 budget recommendation. Like in all past years of the district, there will be the notice will be sent to all of the property owners in the fall. Typically, that's happened in September. That notice will include both the dollar amount for the property owners, particular parcel or parcels if they own more than one, along with the proposed operating plan for 2023. And then that included in that is the notice for the public hearing that will be held before the city council. I will also note just one final board administration item, although subject to what happens in the world and with the pandemic, we are switching over to in-person meetings in 2 weeks by requirement of the city clerk's office. So the timing of when your meeting was on the schedule, we met this way virtually, but we expect that future meetings, again, subject to any future pandemic declarations by the mayor, that we would be back in person for those for advisory board meetings going forward.
I have a question.
Please.
I would have voted anyway for the LED, but when you remarked that you had taken down all the lights, is that, we don't usually have all the lights come down, or do we, in the spring? I can't remember.
No, you're correct. Normally we leave them up until August, until we take them down, unless the park board is doing pruning, in which case we'll remove for that reason, because we don't want them to ruin them. What we found this year, though, is one, the failure rate was very high of the incandescent stringers, and two, and I can pull up a map if it's helpful. We have, due to construction, that we just aren't able to get as many trees lit as we have in the past. So can everyone see this map?
Yeah.
Okay.
I can understand, because I'm around here and I walk around, and with all the construction, I get it. So I was just wondering, because it was a nice feature through the summer, but it sounds like it wasn't very workable this year. Is that correct?
Yeah, they were starting to burn out pretty good, and the stringers themselves were failing. So
Yeah, because I've had some, to my building, and then I've been a little careless about getting them, fixed up. But now maybe this summer I'll just work more on my own.
Well, just to give you a quick sense, so the green circles are all the trees, or in some cases where the trees used to be in the district. So some of these have been removed due to construction. The yellow are the trees that we have power to currently, or did have power to at the end of by the end of the season. So the yellow were lit. The red either don't have, there's an acute issue of why we can't get power to them, or there's a long-term issue of why we can't get power to them. So like on this block, because of construction, we couldn't get, none of these trees could be lit this last winter season because where the power was fed from this block was on this block over here. So the conduit the power feed got removed as part of this construction. Similar, because of the Doyle project, we had issues over here where we couldn't there was no way to get power to them. A couple of these locations, like these two trees, if you can see my cursor, these are the ones where I mentioned where we have to pop open some sidewalk panels to complete some conduit repairs. And then there are some other longer term issues with getting the lights back on, having the ability to have lights on the trees over here and over here. And then this is a sort of an ongoing issue. It's a unique circumstance. These trees over here, we haven't been able to light for a number of years because the power supply is fed from the private development. They are not part of currently part of the SSD festoon system. So we're not able to put lights on those trees. Some of these other ones, again, are just due to construction and some issues that couldn't be resolved in the winter. But because we were seeing the failure rate that we were, coupled with that there just didn't seem to be a good nucleus of being able to light the trees as, that sort of core of the district as we have done in the past. It seemed to financially make more sense just to pull them down, ask the question about going LEDs or not, and then we'll just go with LEDs. So on the question on the LEDs, I could have asked this before. Is the board interested in leaving them up and seeing how long we can get out of them, or do you want to take them down in March of next year, store them, and then put them back up to try to get the full 3 seasons? And I want to be clear, we do not expect that we will get 3 full years out of the stringers, but we may get the equivalent of which would be a year and a half if it follows it, at least a year and a half if it follows what the success we've had in the other districts in terms of duration out on the trees. Thoughts on, and you don't have to make a final decision now, but just thought I'd ask the general feedback if you want to leave the LEDs up or take them down.
So for clarification, if we leave them up, they're going to burn out in a year and a half. But if we take them down every year, they'll last for 3 or more years. Correct?
Yes,
So
based on our experience.
So based on leaving them up or paying a vendor to take them down and put them up multiple times. How's that change the payoff of going these?
We have to do the math on that.
And is there any breakage in the install and deinstall that we need to take into account?
Of the stringers?
Yeah.
No. They take them down more carefully than, like the incandescent, they typically kind of cut out because they're just being, recycled anyways. But the LEDs upon removal, they take them out more carefully, and then we put them in totes and store them in a conditioned environment.
Okay.
And I want to be clear, we don't know that they're going to stop working in 18 months. All I'm saying is we've had 3 at least. Well, chances are they probably last at least 2 years, except for like damage and wind damage and things like that. But we always have some of those replacements, even with the incandescents. So it, we could try leaving them up. I wanted to ask the question if the group had a preference of leaving them up. Clearly, there'd be no labor cost or storage costs if we leave them up. So there's another piece of the equation there to factor in to the financial considerations.
Yeah, I don't see how we can make that decision without knowing what those costs are.
And I'm always a fan of more light, but I agree with Brian. We got to know what we got to see how it really lays out.
Well, why don't we do this? We'll put them up, and then as we've been talking about, and we'll leave them up until we have another conversation about this, which most likely, unless we decide to have another meeting in between, you know, we'll have another meeting about this time next year, and the group can give us some feedback. We won't necessarily need to pull them back right away in the spring, because, you know, presumably they'll continue to stay lit, which we have a reason to believe they will. So part of the rationale on why we removed them this year won't necessarily apply. Lynn, you're muted if you're talking to us.
So essentially this time next year, we can decide to take them down or leave them up.
That's my sense.
Okay. And now I have a question. Now that we've looked at the map, you mentioned that the work needs to be done like under the sidewalks for some of the electrical. So
Yep.
Is it for certain that this is going to get done in time for the new lights in August?
That is the plan. That is very much the plan. In fact, our intent is to start this work really now that the weather is kind of broken. I will say we still have some frozen ground, so we got to get past that. But our goal would be to start this work in May and get everything buttoned up so we're done long in advance of putting everything back up. That's the intent.
Yeah, because that's kind of the kicker here is we've got all these places where there's electrical problems.
Right.
Okay. All right. I don't have other questions.
Any other questions on anything else?
I'm a little confused on that, just waiting till spring. Are you saying that by then we'll know the difference between what it would cost to leave them up and what it's going to cost to store them? Shouldn't we know right now what it would cost to have the vendor come up, pull them all down and put them into storage? Because you're saying that's the cost difference.
If you gave us a couple minutes, we'd be able to give you the answer, Brian. I'm just saying, like, extemporaneously, I don't have the answer to what that cost is going to be.
So it won't hurt to wait till spring, and then you'll have all that information, and we can go, okay, this cost versus maybe this long of a longevity, and we'll make our decision. Then that's the thinking.
That's. I mean, partly, right now we know we want to put them up, and since we won't need to take them down by the time we meet next, we could just pull that information together, and be able to give you more, better information than we can sort of very quickly here, and. So that's my sense of it.
But all the numbers that you gave us, ballpark and what it's going to cost to make the switch is based off of pulling them down and storing them, right?
No. The overtime number is, so let me be clear, the break-even point, that assumed taking them down and storing them. So if that cost comes out, that break-even point comes even faster.
Yeah. Okay.
So without having to store them, your break-even point might be 2 years, which, might be, at least the life of these things. So I think that your context here is just a little different than what we have in the other districts. So anything else the group would like to discuss? Okay, well, I will just note we are, though we won't meet for a while, please know we're always available, email, text, call, any of the three of us, all of the three of us. Again, we extend our offer to meet with any business owners. If you do get questions about the service district, do not hesitate to forward those questions to us. Please also know that we are in your district frequently, so we're taking a look at stuff. But if you do see something, don't hesitate to reach out to us and say, hey, I saw this. And that can be as simple as a text, a quick voicemail message, a call, whatever, an email. So know that we are fully accessible between meetings. If there's nothing else, we can adjourn the meeting at 4:37. All right. Thank you, everyone.